Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. You know what this is. This is Weather Brains episode number 757. It's the pre-show for the 20th of July, 2020, the year that never ends. Yeah, so this is James, and we're going to bring the guest on here and get the show started in about 8 minutes, so just hang tight. But this is that wonderful, magical time here where we do three things. We share boring personal stories, humorous anecdotes, and what else do? We say outrageous things. So thank you for being here. Kind of been an odd situation with these live shots. I've had live shots on Monday nights lately, had one tonight, and we got up there and it was a downpour. You know, we have these summer storms every afternoon. You never know where these things fire. And one happened to fire right on top of our little live shot location. That's always a lot of fun. So let's bring everybody on here, and we'll get this sucker started. We've got a good topic tonight. We're going to share some very interesting research concerning weather. And I bet you we're all going to learn something tonight. And I love to learn things. All right. Now our guests have been invited, or at least our regulars have been invited. It was a big old downpour, but at least it cooled things down. We went from like 95 to 78 in about, I think, 5 minutes. So that was good. And the other good thing about me, I don't have any hair to foul up for television. I have not owned a comb in probably 30 years. Hairspray, I have no idea what that costs. No need for any of that stuff. Hair is overrated. I'm telling you, once you go like this, it's just very freeing. Very freeing. So we've got our summer thunderstorms still around, but I think we're okay. The one that was over me dissipated up there, so we're good. And the tropics about to crank up. I think everybody in the weather enterprise has a sneaking suspicion that it's going to get pretty active around here come August and September, which is almost here. All right, let's bring in our folks. They're in the Zoom waiting room. I wonder if they hear music. When you're in the Zoom waiting room, do y'all hear music, like elevator music or anything?
Nope.
Nope. No music. Yeah, I've never heard. I'm hearing something like a recorder, a flute. Y'all hear that, or is that am I losing my mind?
I hear something.
We're not hearing things, and you're hearing things. Probably my heater.
It's some kind of high-pitched noise, yeah.
Yeah. Boop, boop.
Oh no, nothing like that. It's the furniture truck that knocked down my AT&T internet wire, and that AT&T sued me for $239.56 for.
Wow.
Isn't that nice?
No, that's horrible.
It went from a $500 patio table to a $750 patio table.
All right, hang on. Let me mute here and let's see who's got it. All right, Bill, unmute.
Okay.
Yeah, that's you.
It's me. No, it's
sounds
not.
like Morse code. Somebody's got the key stuck.
No, it's not. It can't be me. All right. Well, I'll just be out again.
Jen, you're my witness here.
Yeah, I think it is you, Bill. It's kind of like a high-pitched noise.
I told you it's that furniture truck backing up in my driveway.
It might be.
Wow.
I'll be right back and see if it works any better. If not, y'all can have a fun show tonight.
No, don't go.
it's kind of like body odor when somebody walks in the room and there's a big group. Somebody's got a problem here, and you just slowly eliminate it one at a time.
Exactly.
And you figure out who it is, and then so poor old Bill.
Oh no.
He had hope his procedure went well last week.
I do too.
I read our friend's Smithville, Mississippi piece. That's a pretty long read. I took the time to read that. That thing was really well done.
Yeah, he did great. I'm so proud. And he just did another one too. Barnes County, North Dakota. And that was from July 18th. You'll have to check that one out too. It was good. Or the Barnes, I can't remember the name of it now. They're all mushed together. We just put out 3 that are due tomorrow.
Ooh. Well, that's a great site.
One's the Teton Wilderness tornado.
Is this Eli Jacks? Who's on here, Bill?
Is that any better?
Yeah, it went away.
Yes.
It's gone.
No?
Well, it's there, not as prominent. It's it sounds like it's some kind of noise in the room there. It doesn't sound like electronic noise.
Yes, I think it's my heater. It's running. It's about to turn off, so it'll be off in a minute.
Bill, it's like 98 degrees outside.
This has been the worst week of my entire life, James. They tried to pull a piece of coal out of my body.
Show title. Tried to pull a piece of coal out of my body.
I know. It's the worst. I thought the 4 months leading up to it was terrible, but the week of it was like 1,000 times worse.
It's not pleasant one way or the other. There's nothing good about it except the fact that it's over.
Then this morning at 4:30, my plane crashed on landing at the Birmingham airport, ruining a perfectly good evening of sleep. And so I just got up.
What?
I was on a plane flying into Birmingham, coming in on the northeast approach, and my plane went down in Trussville and crashed. And I didn't get to see the ending. I only got to see the plane crashing. So I don't know how it ended. So
what? No, whoa. You were on a plane that crashed.
I sure was at 4:30 this morning in a storm. I could see.
You're just talking about it so nonchalantly.
Not much I could do about it.
Oh my goodness!
I think. Wait. Time out. Bill's yanking our chain here. We didn't have any storms at 4:30 this morning.
I was dreaming. It didn't really happen.
Brother.
Oh, brother.
I said it was a dream. I said.
Oh, boy.
We missed that part.
Thank you.
I mean, you didn't hear about any plane crashes this morning, did you?
What's odd, Bill, is Saturday night, I had a crazy dream about like this old B-52 looking plane that like went down right in front of me into water.
Yeah, it's been the craziest thing during all these crazy events. I've had all these dreams, like I was downtown, I was at Innovation Depot, and some government warplane was shooting the city of Birmingham, and I was fascinated by the sight. Then I realized it was coming toward me, and I ran and dove in some building, and it was like,
hey,
that
James,
could really happen.
James, can we get Bill in for treatment? I mean, I'm just checking. Can we do
it's
that?
About time.
Clearly
Tomorrow
needs to go in
morning,
and get some
please.
professional help.
Yeah.
Professional help.
I love you, Bill, but treatment.
It's been
a
long 4 months, Troy.
Are we all here?
No, Alex Forbes is not here, but I sent him the invite, so I don't know.
Hello, Eli.
Hello, everybody.
Hey, man. Troy Kimmel here. I just want to say hello. We hadn't seen each other in person, I guess. We've talked on the phone before. So.
Hey, Troy. Good to see you.
Good to see you. And good to see the rest of
James,
you.
Good to see you. Did you bring enough for the group? I didn't get a popsicle.
I do my walk in the afternoon, and I get these low-calorie things, and that's a treat I get for after my walk. So.
Oh, that looks good.
I have a Krispy Kreme donut upstairs with my name on it.
Yeah, that's what I'd like to have, Bill. Maybe, Bill, you're not as crazy as I think you are. So,
Well, if y'all like to hear the other about 120 crazy dreams I've had in the last 4 months,
No, we better
we can
stop
make
at
that
this
a whole
point.
other show.
No. Well, I guess we can start. We got Eli here, so
He's the main man.
we'll just roll it, man, and we'll see. So let me get the recorder is rocking and rolling. Number 1, channel number 2. And here we go in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. This is Weather Brains episode number 757. This is the weekly show, all about weather, the world's longest running weather podcast. You know, for years we were like the world's only weather podcast. Now
Yeah.
there's a million of them, but that's okay. We're glad they're all here. But this is our 14th year, and whether we've improved or not, I have no earthly idea. But at least we're still here. Troy Kimmel, we're the old timers here. You know, we're early adopters. We started doing television back when we were kids, and we've been doing podcasting since we were kids. So now we're
James
just
and I
old
started out
podcasters.
doing weather when it was done on tablets, real
Exactly.
tablets. So
Oh, and
Stone
occasionally we had to send
tablets.
the smoke signals we'd have to send. So yeah. So Troy, your heat level is down this week. I mean, it's like a cool wave, huh?
yeah, it only got to 100 today at Camp Mabry. So
Nothing to it. Nothing.
No,
to it.
nothing,
You got this.
nothing.
I told my
So I-
16-year-old that it was going to be 117 on Thursday for football practice, and he believed me.
Wow.
Was that a dream?
Yeah.
Probably that.
I was out doing a live shot tonight. We had one of these good old summer thunderstorms, and we dropped from 70 or 95 to about 78 in minutes. It was very refreshing.
I got
So,
none, thank you. So I didn't.
Okay,
didn't
that's
enjoy
the
it.
way it works.
No, and
Jen,
yesterday, James, I stepped out. We had a little rain shower here, and the cooler air blew in. Troy goes out for a walk without looking, and I get about a half mile down the road before a lightning bolt hits the ground about a half mile away.
wow.
So Troy jogged on his way back to the
You
house.
checked your significant weather advisories, Troy.
I know, really. It developed that quickly, and I was not prepared. So,
What, now the question is, was it heat lightning?
well, all lightning is heat lightning.
Heat lightning. Yes, we get a lot of reports of that.
lightning. I'm sorry, James.
Lightning, yes. So up in Ohio, Jen, how cool was it today? Did you get out of the 80s?
We were in the 80s, about 85 today. Not too
Oh,
bad.
it sounds so cool. It's refreshing.
I know. It wasn't bad. I did not get to enjoy it. I was inside all day. I was telling you in the pre-show, we were buttoning up some new summaries. We have 3 coming out tomorrow on Tornado Talk. And the one that Nelson, who joined us last week, he just did another one. You'll have to check it out. It's the Marion, North Dakota F4. It's kind of an obscure event, and he did a great job bringing that one to light. And then we have 3 coming out tomorrow, 2 from Pennsylvania in 2003, and then the Teton Wilderness, Wyoming F4, highest elevation, significant tornado from 1987. So
Jen, y'all
busy
do
today.
too much up there. You make the rest of us look bad. You work too
It's
hard.
a-
Could you
It's
tone
my
it down a
boy.
little, Jim?
It's my boys. They're doing Vic and Nelson, and then we also have and William. We call him Wyoming. He because he's from Wyoming. He wrote one of the summaries as well. So they've been busy. It's been great.
Well, it is a great resource. I mean, I know it takes a lot of time to put those together, so that is just
Thank
awesome.
you.
And
so
Jen's
Aubrey,
working on a recorded segment for us, James.
I can't
moving
wait.
forward.
So is this start next week? I mean, you want to preview
There you
this?
go,
Wanna
Jen.
tease it?
It's on your. It's on.
It's
now
all-
you got
all right, I
start
can
next
do
week
it.
now.
Okay.
So tease it. Go.
Well, it's going to be a This Week in Tornado History segment. It's kind of a quick blip on something that occurred during that week. So I'll just do a quick 90 seconds and tell you what happened and hit the highlights.
Love it. So there's another feature that starts next week only on this show. And
Yay.
only on this show do you have Aubrey Urbanowitz from Harrisonburg, Virginia. Yes.
I'm in the weeds tonight, guys. I'm behind.
In charge of the show tonight, Aubrey.
Oh man.
And that's the show title, In the Weeds, or did she say smoking weed? I wasn't sure which one she said.
Yes.
No.
Hey,
Trying to
man.
climb my way out.
Kim, pull us out of this, please, ma'am. What's happening in the weather universe at the National Weather Center? You don't go in there anymore, do you?
Don't go in there anymore.
You have no idea what's going on in there.
Yeah, we have our virtual interactions, and it's great. I was actually going to sink us further down that hole. I got to drive around town today, which is always a joy these
Like
days.
our grandparents,
You got to travel.
Going for
You
a
got to
drive.
travel.
I took a trip around town, and I was actually admiring today. You brought up the the weed sales thing. Oklahoma, man, when we had that legalized, we embraced it. You wouldn't believe how many marijuana sales places there are that have little tornadoes, as part of their moniker in some way, shape, or form.
That they do.
Oh my gosh, the Toklahoma is probably my favorite. I mean, how cute is that? A little tornado on the end.
I have to preface the "in the weeds" phrase. So if anyone ever worked in a restaurant, this is a very popular restaurant term. Just like 86 means we don't have any more of this certain product, "in the weeds" means I'm slammed, I'm buried, I don't even know what to think right now. So that is the premise behind "in the weeds." It does not mean what you might think it means.
Yeah.
So we're going
Still
to change the name of the show to Marijuana Brains after this. And- hey, man. All right, Bill, take it out before our guest run. Please.
Yes,
Bring him in.
please.
My beautiful wife was listening to our conversation, and she brought me that Krispy Kreme donut with my name on it. So, Troy,
Aw.
I don't know what you were eating, but
Yeah, thank you for
I
doing
got
that.
a cup
Bill.
of coffee and some Krispy Kreme donuts. That'll make anything better. But
Yeah.
tonight's first guest weather brain is a friend of the show. It says in my notes that he's a trend of the show, and that's probably true too. But he's a rising young superstar in our field. He's a student at Mississippi State University. Alex Forrest, welcome back to Weather Brains.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
Yeah, it's good to be here. The first time I met you, I think you were like 10 years old, Alex, and you videoed the Weather Ready Fest in 2016 in Norfolk. You did such a fantastic job, and that video really told the story that day, and I'll always admire you for doing that. And you've gone on to do way bigger and better, greater things since then. Tell us what's going on with your life now that you're almost like a super adult and grown up and everything.
Yeah, well, everything's been slow since March, as is pretty much status quo around the world. I was about to finish up my junior year, went on spring break. Actually, I went on spring break Thursday afternoon, and never in my wildest dreams would I imagine I was not going to return after spring break. We were leading up to the symposium that was a couple weekends out. And the week everything happened was my spring break, and I was actually doing some freelance work here at the Fox station in Atlanta, and watching everything happen from the perspective of sitting in the studio every day and watching the anchors rush in. Breaking news: UGA is closing everything. Atlanta is shut down. The one thing that will always stick out in my head is Fulton County, which is the largest county here in Georgia, let out, like they did an early release suddenly. It wasn't like, oh, we're not coming to school tomorrow. It was everybody's going home now and they're not
Like
returning.
Snowmageddon too.
Yes. But outside of that, I did this storm SPC project that we'll talk more about here in a bit. And that's pretty much it. Everything's at a snail's pace right now.
Well, it sounds like
Alex, I'm just going to say, you tried to salvage the symposium so much. I know y'all really worked hard, and Aubrey and I were so fortunate to be there last year, and looking forward to this last year and back in March. But thank you for what you did. I know y'all tried on behalf of the symposium. So
Sure. Yeah. The biggest thing for us is that just with so much uncertainty, especially with the university, there was no way to do it online or to even have people come to campus. Like, that was completely off the table. So we're looking forward to it next year, though.
So fast to get the presenters to put their stuff together to do online, because it was everything just happened so fast, and it was at the very beginning. So it was just kind of one of those timing things.
But there's still a gift in all this, Aubrey, and Alex knows what I'm going to say is I was certainly excited about the symposium, but I can't wait for the T-shirt to come out because we still have the T-shirt for the symposium, and that'll be the collector's item at this point. So
the symposium that never happened.
Yes, exactly.
Well, the other good thing that may come out is we may play a round robin schedule in SEC football this year.
Yes.
Well, it's good to have you on the show tonight, Alex, and we are excited about talking about your research and SPC categories. That's going to be exciting. But tonight's second guest, Weatherbrain's a friend of the show as well. He's chief of the Forecast Services Division of the National Weather Service, Eli Jacks. Welcome back to the show.
Hey, great to see you, Bill. Great to see everybody.
Yeah, it's good to see you. Good to hear you too. So you've had a little bit going on, Eli, this last few months. You got your survey out. Can you talk about some of the response so far? I guess how big has the response been so far to your HAZCENT?
Well, I'll tell you what. I'll put it to a guessing game. So we put out our public survey on June 11th. How many responses do we have?
3,000.
Try again.
8,000.
Keep going.
15,000.
Wow.
10,000.
75,000.
Oh my gosh.
That's
Now make sure we understand, Eli. Let people know what it is that we're proposing,
Sure.
or you have in the PSA or the public information statement.
Right. So, Troy, what we're proposing is, and after a lot of work, and I'm glad to see you, Kim. She was really, really important to us along the way in developing one of the surveys that we did that we've been using. But what we're proposing doing is to actually remove the advisory term from the WAWA system, along with special weather statements, and that includes the significant weather advisory, and put everything in plain language. As a headline. What our research found over many years now is that the advisory term is very poorly understood. Beyond that, and probably I think even worse at this point, is that it is conflated with watch. People actually think an advisory is a watch. And so, and I'll tell you one of the things we're running up against, and it's an honest, and I'd welcome discussion here, it's an honest issue, which is if you don't have an advisory and you just have a plain language headline, what the heck do you call the thing? We're very, very attached to our terms. But the idea is that we're going to go, we learned this from the emergency managers, and the emergency managers have been unbelievable in providing feedback. They operate on a prepare and act paradigm. That's what they do. If it's other information, okay, they're interested in it, but they need to know if for a significant event, if they are going to prepare or they're going to act. So watch or warning. So that's the idea that we're going with. And there's a lot of detail beneath that I can talk about, but fundamentally, anything that's not a watch or a warning is going to be a plain language statement equipped with VTEC, and that includes the special weather statement. So that means that all of our partners will be able to read all of our messages with computers. And then there's another addition called Common Alerting Protocol. So I'm getting a little more technical here, but all of this, the point being that instead of using the headlines, instead of using criteria-based products to convey our information, we're using impact-based information enabled by urgency, severity, and certainty that we will convey to the public and our partners. So that's kind of the elevator speech, if you will.
Eli, one thing that you and I have had the chance to talk over a lot of issues. Unfortunately, you had to pick up the phone from me sometimes, but when we talk, but one thing that I was a little worried about going into this a little bit, what was being proposed was that we might try to replace the advisory. And I am so happy to see that we're not. And I'm fully on board. I don't want to see that word advisory. I love what you've proposed. I don't want to influence anyone else listening that hasn't done a survey yet, but congratulations. I think you've done some very good work.
Well, I really appreciate that, Troy. And to your point, the issue that we're going to have is, and again, going a little technical and going to our valid time event code, which is the computer code, which enables partners to read our messages. Advisory has a certain computer code that we're going to do away with. It is going to be gone. We learned the lesson from our aerial flood advisories that would never go away because it's so deeply embedded in our code. So we're going to blow away the Y. We already have an S, a .s as a significance code. And so it's a statement, okay? So, but we're not going to call it a statement. We're not going to say the Weather Service has issued a statement. Inside baseball, we can say, okay, we're issuing a statement, but we're just going to say to the general public, instead of heat advisory today, very hot today, gusty winds today, light snow overnight. And then we have the what, where, and the when in our messaging, which has been very, very popular. And so we're extending that throughout all of our messaging. And so the forecaster will really be able to do impact-based decision support by putting the key information in the headline, the other key information in the what section of the message, and then they're going to be able to use urgency, severity, and certainty in this common alerting protocol I talked about. They can actually edit it in the future where they can't do it now. So the forecaster is going to have a lot of tools to really say what they know, when they know it, and how they want to say it, without having to worry, is it 104 heat index or is it 106 heat index? Will I pull the trigger on the advisory? And believe me, I was watching that all weekend. It was driving me nuts.
Well, so one thing that I'm interested in a little bit, and then I know Jen has a question coming up from the broadcaster standpoint in a second. Any heartburn at all, Eli, from the standpoint of the significant weather advisory? Because that's something that, by the way, not necessarily consistent, Eli, across the Weather Service. And I know how much leadership and Weather Service likes consistency. But is there any heartburn with getting rid of that and just saying a strong thunderstorm is located near Austin and will be until 8 o'clock tonight? Any problem or any feedback that kind of gives you any kickback on that?
No. And in fact, and I have to go through my Rolodex of public information statements that have gone out, but it's either out or will be soon, this proposal to actually replace that significant weather advisory, kind of as a lead with plain language, but to equip it with VTEC like the rest of our statements will be. Although actually, let me correct myself, the VTEC won't be until the big change later, but the significant weather advisory will just be, as you said, Troy, strong thunderstorms approaching if it's not a severe thunderstorm warning yet.
I love this. This is great from so many different perspectives. From a radio perspective, because I do radio forecasts on different radio stations across the country, a lot of times you have about 20 seconds, and then you have to do the intro and the outro, and you throw in a commercial and all these different things. You have 20 seconds to get the impacts out. And so since 1997, it's been the National Weather Service has issued a winter weather advisory. By the time you say that, there's no time for anything else. So, moving that out, then the focus can really be on the impacts. And we've already kind of switched our philosophy at the Storm Report to kind of focus in on that, because it got frustrating. It's like, I don't have the time to tell people exactly what the weather is going to be and how it's going to impact their drive, their plans, whatever it may be. And so I really want to give you guys kudos for everything that you've gone into, putting this together and simplifying things so we can really help with the messaging and focus in on what's most important to the listener. And so I just wanted to give you guys kudos on that.
Well, thanks, Jan. I'm glad it's working for you. Let me point to something else. I know you mentioned radio, but there's a lot of questions we've been getting. And by the way, we are, and I want to give kudos to my senior project advisor, Dr. Danielle Nagel, who has been working with me the last few years, providing some social science expertise and working with me on this. And she and I have been doing focus groups. We did focus groups with broadcasters and emergency managers in Dallas, as we're doing this, wherever you are. And we're actually in Boise tomorrow, then we're in Boston, and we're in Colorado, and we're going to actually be doing Fairbanks too. So we're going to have broadcasters and emergency managers to provide feedback on this proposal. One of the things we hear very often is, but is it going to still be on the map, right? And my answer is yes. The question is, what are you going to put on the map? So if let's say that a winter weather advisory is colored, what is it, light pink? I think it's light pink. All right. So if we still use that light pink, it will just say light snow tonight. You could put that on your map. It can actually be descriptive about what it is. So the computer coding enables a lot of functionality, and the work will just have begun, and the decision point is coming pretty soon if leadership accepts the recommendations that we make. And I have to say, we're still collecting the feedback. So we're still at the point where a final decision has not been made. But presuming we move forward with what I'm describing to you in this proposal, it's going to take a while to implement this. And we're going to have the opportunity to refine that language. We want to talk to broadcasters who are saying, I can't say winter weather advisory anymore. What am I going to say? There's a lot of flexibility available and beyond my head to conjure about what that's going to be. You know, I'll just throw something out, not to lead the witness, but you know, I've heard a lot of proposals. Why don't you just say alert? And you know, that goes back to what we were discussing a minute ago. The last thing we want to do is to introduce a confusing third term. So no more things, no more nouns as the headline. But what I would be supportive of, depending what comes out of the feedback, is an action word, perhaps like caution. So caution, light snow tonight. If you want to highlight that this is something to pay attention to that's not quite a warning, you could do it that way. But you know, I really want to hear from broadcasters. And I'm sure we're going to be having more focus groups and more engagements as we go forward, because we really want to then refine it and get it right. There'll be a lot of work ahead.
I mean, I have to be honest that sometimes I don't even show things like a winter weather advisory or, you know, I mean, a fog advisory. If it's already part of my forecast and I'm calling for 1 to 2 inches and NWS put out a winter weather advisory for 1 to 2 inches, it's part of my forecast anyways. I've already got other things to talk about. It doesn't even make my show, to be honest, because it's already part of things.
So Arbor, you're already doing what we're proposing, just de facto. Right.
Mm-hmm. And this week has been a great example with these heat advisories.
Oh yeah.
And oh, yeah. So you know, you and I'm not going to go down my rant here, but
you can. I'll join you.
Come on, James.
So it's like you got 5 or 6 counties here that are under a heat advisory. You cross a county line and they're not under a heat advisory. No human being could tell the difference between the heat level in county A and county B that's in the advisory and not in the advisory. And I understand at some point you got to pull the trigger when you got excessive heat and it's a real problem. But these heat advisory criteria is just too low. I mean, this is the deep South. It's summer. It's hot. It's always hot. And I'm not going to get on TV and tell people to go get into an air-conditioned room and, do these idiotic tips. I think people that watch us are actually intelligent and have some sense. And so in my opinion, I am so glad that thing's going away. My heart is warm and fuzzy. So,
well, James, the only problem is that Austin's under a heat advisory till December 20th. So,
that's right.
But if I could talk
when you're not under a heat advisory.
Yeah, exactly.
Permanent condition.
But James, let me join your rant. Okay.
Go, Eli, go.
Yeah. So I think where this is going and where the biggest culture change is. So let me go to winter for a minute. Criteria-based products. Think about it. All right. So it's in our directives. It's in our policy. Our forecasters do a great job at following our policy, and it does say in our policy that they may deviate from the criteria. So let's say an advisory is, 3 inches somewhere. Then if it's 2 inches, but it's at rush hour, they can issue the warning. But the question is, do they? And I think part of one of the unintended benefits of this whole effort, I think, of doing away with this advisory term and doing away with the special weather statement, you've just done away with 2 breakpoints, 2 criteria breakpoints. How many times do we see in the area forecast discussions, I don't know if I'm going to pull the advisory trigger. I don't know if it's going to hit criteria. We're going to go to the next shift. I don't know if it's going to hit warning criteria. I'll leave that to the next shift. So if everything's just a statement, unless it's a warning, then you're smoothly adjusting your language, you're adjusting your urgency, severity, and certainty, and you're able to go about telling folks what you know without worrying about those artificial breakpoints. And then the last thing I'll say, going back to the heat for a minute, I saw around here, online and on the air, people using the word dangerous with a heat advisory. Now, I will make the argument. I was out walking too, and I'm trying to walk as much as I can. And I wasn't out. Well, I got a cooling thunderstorm, so I went out late today. I snuck out, but it was too hot yesterday. So that's dangerous, right? But it's just an advisory, to me. But I think what we have to do is a lot of coordination. If cooling centers are being opened in local municipalities, and you don't even have an advisory out, then we need to reevaluate whether where our criteria are correct or whether we should be using that product at all. So it's what one emergency manager told me is they do a lot of cutting and pasting. They love this approach because they can just cut and paste it. Light snow this evening. If it's an advisory, they do that. If it's just a regular hot day in Texas, they don't do that. And so then the criteria becomes, okay, is this a statement that's in a what, where, when format that, okay, this is more than a normal forecast, I'll cut and paste it. Is it a warning? And then those are the only things in the new system that you actually have to worry about.
So Eli, will you put polygons on all of these products? Because I pushed really hard to get those on the significant weather advisories earlier, because that's an important product, I think, that we can tailor to an app-based audience, because you're either in it or you're out of it, just like James always says, respect the polygon.
Absolutely. So we actually have a happy coincidence going on. At the same time that we have our hazard simplification project, we have something which has kind of a very close name called Hazard Services, which is our new warning software that's already now being implemented. And it's really very exciting because it does a few things. As I mentioned, it allows forecasters to edit the urgency, severity, and certainty where they can now, but it also enables polygons for any hazard, whereas now our long duration hazards can't do that. So I'm working with my staff, my service program team leads, and my service area leads to identify those hazards that should have polygons. And the answer really, for the most part, is just about all of them, because you just want to be able to identify the area of greatest threat. When we went to storm-based warnings in 2007, that was the whole idea. I mean, that was sort of the incipient foray into that. And so I'm excited about that.
Eli, does that replace what I know as WarnGen? Okay, I just wonder.
Yeah. WarnGen, Graphical Hazard Generator, and RiverPro. So for the river flood warnings, they're all going to hazard services. One interface, really a great thing for our forecasters, and it gives them that kind of capability we haven't had before.
So what do you think the urgency, severity, and certainty is going to look like in the weather service side on the public product, Eli? We know what it looks like in the CAP product. What's it going to look like on this other side?
Well, so right now, Common Alerting Protocol, this is an international standard, by the way, they're using it across the globe. It's already in our products. It's invisible though. So the urgency, severity, and certainty, I could send you a listing that we have, which has fixed urgency, severity, and certainty for every one of our 122 Wawa products. And so an advisory is generally a moderate severity. A warning is a severe severity. And then there is an extreme severity level available in Common Alerting Protocol. And so that's used for tornado emergencies, flash flood emergencies. And so the beauty of that is that you can have a situation where you only have 2 inches of snow, but you might have a severe severity on a cap tag, which could light it a certain color, light the map a certain color, light your phone a certain color. That shows you this is only 2 inches, but it's happening at rush hour, and the roads are going to ice over quickly, and you're going to have a snow jam. So or even go to extreme if you have to. So the difference in the hazard services paradigm, though, as I said, is that forecasters for the first time will be able to edit that. One of the things that we're going to collect feedback on, this is one of the finer points as we go forward, is do we actually want to see that in the message under the what, where, when? Do we want to see urgency, severity, and certainty? Is that going to make the message too long? Should it remain invisible? Should it be somewhere else? There's a lot of stuff that we got to talk through once we decide which way we're going.
Yeah, that's an important idea, because there is some differences in what you see, or on the CAP side, and what you see on the on the public product side. Some of that information is really valuable that's over there, and
we've
Common
heard that.
Alerting Protocol. side. Can you bring back one vintage product for us? Just have it over there just in case.
Traveler's
Don't
advisory.
say,
Yeah, please,
oh,
James.
come
Yeah, you're on the
on. I
same
knew.
page,
No,
man. There we
no,
go.
Eli, no.
Come on, just for me and James. I mean,
No.
I love
Especially
the
for the
Traveler's
city of
advisory.
Atlanta. Just keep it in
All I'm going to
place.
say is I'm sorry, I can't.
even Alex would like to see the
Cash
Travelers
is on the way,
Advisory.
Eli. Cash is on the way.
Yeah.
As long as it's under $20.
Okay, I understand, Eli. Yeah.
I like the Stockman's advisory. Bill, remember
Oh
that?
man, that brings back memories.
That's
Stockman's
awesome.
advisory.
Maybe a cold wave warning. Could you work on that
Yeah,
one?
those are the good
Well,
old
so
days.
actually, if I can talk a little bit more about some of the specifics. So you know how we only have a wind chill advisory right now and a wind chill warning? You can get really cold weather without wind. And so one of the repairs in the project that's going to be implemented sooner than this bigger change I've been talking about is to have an extreme cold warning to replace it. And then you could put, if it's windy, you say, in the headline, wind, windy and cold, or just cold. And so that, again, that's a usage of the plain language statement that we can employ. A few other things for the mariners, let me point out. So as we went through our 24 advisories, that's how many there are. And that includes El Nino advisory, right? And so we can talk about that too. That's an interesting one. But the marine ones have been a little tougher. They're very deeply institutionalized. Tsunami advisory is very deeply institutionalized, and we actually have a lot of investment in education materials. That understandably is a tough change and a costly change. So the advisory was chosen for tsunami. I've come to learn some years ago, just because we were using it for other products. The high surf advisory is another one that we're still working on. There's going to be some common collection, but our teams have worked very, very hard on that. And we've come to realize, and then we throw small craft advisory in there also, these are actually warning level events. So if you're in a boat, a small craft, what's a small craft advisory, we're actually proposing going to a small craft warning. We put out our survey on that and we got 85% agreement. And that was something, that level of agreement was very surprising to me, because I had heard a lot of pushback. Small craft advisory is so deeply institutionalized, okay? Same thing for tsunami advisory. We're actually going to propose renaming it, calling it a warning, not calling it a tsunami. We have the tsunami warning, of course, we know what that means, but that the tsunami advisory is really more of a harbor event. It's not an inundation event, a deep inland inundation event. And so we're proposing, I don't recall the exact wording, but it's going to be along the lines of a harbor warning, something like that. And so there's been a lot of creative work that our teams have brought to me with this project that I've just been so impressed by and so grateful for. And I know it's all about providing the correct message to those who are using our products.
So Eli, have you gotten any feedback that surprised you, that, or any pushback that was kind of surprising to you?
Well, I will say this. The public survey, I mentioned the 75,000 comments we're about to cross. Oh, and by the way, we just put out a survey today, that same survey in Spanish. To my knowledge, it's the first time we've put out a Spanish public information survey with a Spanish survey. And kudos to our San Juan office for actually converting it. So we're going to be looking forward to that. And there's the word warning is aviso in Spanish. And so isn't that interesting? It sounds like advisory. I'm sorry, I might have lost my thread here. What surprised me? The public survey is not coming in with as quite high numbers as all the rest of our surveys. And in our partner webinars that we've had 2,000 people attend, we have our 5th one on Thursday. And so that's a little advertisement. Folks can still sign up for that one. We've had 2,000 people attendees, and Danielle does these polls in the survey. What do you think of this idea? It's instant feedback right after I've given, 10, 12 slides, really going into depth, explaining the concept. And we've been getting a consistent 85% agreement from emergency managers, broadcasters, departments of transportation, the K through 12, all of our partners who use our products. The public survey, we had to strike a balance because we couldn't go into that level of detail. It's for the general public. We just made it very short and sweet. And so when we have a team that's analyzing the comments, and I'll be very interested to see if they're understanding the proposal fully. You know, are they thinking that we're doing away with all of our warning terms? I think I've seen a little bit of that. So that analysis is going to be very important into our final decision, but it's still almost a 2-to-1 in favor of the change, even in that survey.
I was kind of surprised on one of the webinars that I listened to that there was a bit of pushback from the private side, which I didn't anticipate. And I guess that's because they've got to program, change, do different things. It wasn't a lot, you know, because like you said, there was generally a large amount of agreement, but some of the pushback was from the private side. And I thought that was surprising.
Well, from the broadcast, I'm not sure if you mean from the broadcaster side.
More like the private weather services.
Or the private weather
sector,
services, private sector.
AccuWeather, those folks.
Yeah. You know, we're going to look more at the comments that they've provided, but I think it's about, there is work that has to be done. I think once we let them know it's going to be a good 2 years or more before we're able to make this change, they're more comfortable, because there's a lot of work for them. And I appreciate that. I really do. You know, I don't take this lightly at all. You know, as Kim well knows, I've been working on this for years. And as you guys know, because I've been here before talking about it, and I'm really very pleased to have reached this point. But it's a large investment, and it's going to be a large investment for those who use the information. But I just can't see using a term that not only people don't understand, but that they confuse with our other terms, which thereby weakens our other terms. And, you know, I've heard many times, and it's a valid proposal. Why don't you, instead of doing all this, why don't you just educate? And I get that. My personal opinion with this particular system is because the warning term is good. You know, the watch term gets confused with warning, and that's still there. I'm not, that hasn't gone away. There's a level of that, but the advisory term really sticks out as an arcane term that it means less severe than a warning, but imminent, and it has no connotation with it. And I just don't see how you can educate on that in any kind of enduring way. However, I can see, you know, you've seen the cupcake watch, cupcake warning, you know, images, you can search it. You know, I think we can, maybe we want to have a contest. What is the best way to educate on watch warning? Send us your images. I think we can educate on it's possible or it's happening, prepare or act, watch or warning. I think that is something that we can do. And so the education is going to be really important as part of this. So.
Yeah, I think what was so striking to me when I was working with you guys at the early phases of HAZCEMP was just how poorly understood advisory is, even within the meteorological community. And that's where I think we can't, if we don't even know what it means. And I mean, it was a stunning number of broadcast meteorologists in our first survey wave who didn't know. And when I spoke with some of my colleagues, even at the National Severe Storms Laboratory, and told them, you know, here are the results. And, you know, they asked me, well, so wait, what does advisory mean? And I thought, okay, you know, this is actually really important feedback, because that suggests very strongly the education isn't the answer. What we've created is something that is a distinction that is really fundamentally difficult to grasp through categorization as a way of conveying it. And Alex, this will be something that we talk about, I think, a little bit later on, as you've studied this for SPC categorization of actually a really complex set of parameters. You know, we're trying to shove a lot into these categories, and it's not intuitive even for sophisticated users. So when it came to advisory, when I saw those results, I thought, yeah, chuck it. This is just
we're chucking it, Kim. We're chucking it, and thanks.
I'm so excited that you've come to this point. And hearing you talk about it too, doesn't it just strike you as our system, you know, the Weather Service over time built up this whole set of language that even we have struggled to learn effectively, to try to make everything fit into a nice little box. And now the proposals you're coming up with, the plain language, is like, why weren't we just saying that all along? Why did it always have to have a product label and box? I understand in the government, that has its form and function, especially for military applications and so on, where you need triggers, that can be really useful, and that can embed things. But I think it's just what you're suggesting, especially for the modern era, the modern communication era, where there's so much that people are exposed to, that can be so confusing and so not straightforward. It's just such a wonderful way to go.
Oh, well, thank you, Kim. If I can just say, while you're talking, Kim, just a shout out to you and social science in general, because we could not have done this without social science. Gina Esco, of course, and now Danielle. I've had a tremendous support throughout this process, and I couldn't be happier about that. And thank you for everything you've done.
A comment on that, Eli. I think, from the broadcast side, the problem with constantly educating is we have a short amount of time on air.
Yeah.
There's a lot more things that I need to be talking about if we're talking about a warning, a watch, or something, a big weather event. Why am I having to constantly educate and go over these things over and over and over again? We need to be using common sense terms like we're wanting to do, so we can tap into that and stop. One thing I hate repeating myself. And so constantly saying the same things over and over and over again, it's, I feel like it's a waste of my breath, because you're obviously not reaching everybody and you're missing people. You're ultimately missing people from, or getting the information to a lot of people.
And there's probably some consultant beating on you when you do it, Aubrey.
Thankfully, I don't have that anymore.
Yeah, I agree. But, we all have the tweeter and the face bag and the gram, that there are other ways in which we can be creative in teaching. And let me just say, I'm really guilty. I'm probably the most guilty party in this whole room here of not taking the time to stop and explain some of these terms, because I'm old as dirt. I've been using these things for 40 years, and you just think everybody understands this stuff. And I agree with what Kim said. A lot of us, we don't even understand it. And we goodness, don't even get me started on pop.
Pops.
That's a whole.
Yeah.
That's what I was thinking.
Yeah. That thing has
That's
no
a
meaning.
whole. That's a whole. That's a show in itself. But I need to sit down and do more writing in just a calm, not long. People are not going to go into some War and Peace novel that you're writing about this stuff. But if it's short, interesting graphics, they'll pay attention. They'll look at it. So I think I have to do a better job in explain. So once Eli figures all this stuff out, and we have a firm direction, and this is what we're going to do, then we just need to sit down and explain it. We have to be better at that.
Well, and you guys can really help me to refine the details, as I've been talking about, because this has to serve all of you and serve the public, and and by extension.
Yeah, and my greatest concern, it's the public becoming desensitized. They hear all these advisories and watches and warnings and this and that all the time, and all of a sudden it's just noise. They just hear it. Stuff happens and nothing ever goes on. It's not that big of a deal. I just think we have to keep some dry powder, if that makes any sense, for really big days. And if every day, there's a advisory, heat advisory yesterday, an aerial flood advisory. And what does that mean? I don't even know what that means.
I just got one on my phone, Jason.
Yeah, I mean,
there you go, Bill.
So,
all these things are going to go away. Yeah.
Yeah. I think this is just great. So whoever started, or, whoever was the initiation point of this whole thing, thank you, because it's just needed. And thanks again to Kim and those on the social side, because most of us have no experience in this. We don't, we have a physical science background. So Kim, you're the greatest. Thank you.
Oh, well, I mean, really in this, it's the credit goes to Eli for asking for it, embracing us, because this is the first major weather service program change. This is huge. It touches everything that really utilize social science end to end. And, I can point to a couple examples in the tropical world where they did some, social scientific work to get things off the ground, like storm surge. But I think in terms of the intensity of what it's taken to get this change put through, Eli, like he said, he's been at this for 5-6 years now. This all started in gosh, probably before then even. You've been seeding this for a very long time. I don't know if you want to. Eli's sitting there nodding like, "Oh, I know the day I started this."
I do know the day it started.
It was July 17th. What was the day you started it? How long has this been going?
I don't remember the exact day, but it was the David Letterman video lampooning the system, and I said, "Okay, I have a few years left. Let me see what I can do about this."
What a fun, gentle way to take yourself into retirement in the Weather Service. Is just revamp the entire system. But yeah, no, the credit really does go to Eli for embracing us. It's been a real learning experience, right? On both sides, to try to figure out how to even do that. I mean, there was no roadmap for how to even, what even needs to be done. How do you try to figure out if the system works or not? That had never been thought of before.
But if I may, Kim, I don't want to let this go without thanking all of the program leaders, all of the volunteer forecasters across the Weather Service. I've had some amazing volunteers to this very day, including Kevin Smith and Pocatello, who put QR codes on our outreach material. Why do I have 75,000 comments? That's why, and so this has been a real community effort, and all of my staff and all the volunteers have just been amazing in doing this. Before I know you're going to want to transition to SPC, and I want to stay around and listen to that. But Bill showed us donut. May I introduce you to a friend of mine?
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
Go.
Oh yeah.
I would like you to meet Harry Lope. So
wow.
Let me explain. So
show title.
I would like you to meet Harry Lope.
Harry. All right. So my lovely wife has been giving me haircuts because we're not leaving the house, right? And I'm never going to be going back to a barber because she's terrific. Susan is just amazing.
Here, Eli.
All right. So we did it up in sometimes we did it in the deck, and this weekend we did it in the kitchen. So then I went out on the deck. It was not 100 degrees, but I like sit out in the heat, and so I called my mom on FaceTime, and so. All of a sudden, Susan comes out with, I'd had a delicious quarter piece of cantaloupe, and she had put some hair on top of the cantaloupe, so it started that way. So then my mother starts directing, and she says, "Oh, he needs some eyes, or give him a nose." So of course, look at my nose, right? Pretty good nose, all right? And, then she went back in, need some eyes. Need some ears, right? And so here's the creation. So it was a family creation, but as you can see, he does not have a brain. If only he had.
Show title. He does not have a brain.
So
that whole segment was one big show title.
Yeah, I was going to say that's our show title all the time.
I will relieve you of myself.
What was it? She put hair on the cantaloupe, or is another one?
Yeah.
I like we did it in the kitchen. That's gonna be the show.
I was gonna leave that one alone right there.
I had to bring it up.
Go there.
And then on the deck. And then on the deck.
So Eli, before we start talking about SPC and all that, talk about the bureaucracy and changes that have got to happen to make this all a reality, because that seems kind of daunting.
Yeah. So what we need to do is, we reorganized in 2015 in a way that I really love, and it works out really well. We have our central processing, our computing portfolio, and we have our dissemination portfolio, and we have our science, technology, and fusion, and our observations portfolios. But for my purposes, I'm dealing with the central processing, the computing, and the dissemination portfolios. And so the changes that I'm describing are far from trivial. So they have to be put into requirements that software developers can use and incorporate into hazard services. So that's one piece of the thing. We then have to make sure that NOAA Weather Radio works with the new systems, for example. We have to, and then Kim, you'll be interested in this one, is the visualization of it. So we are going to a GIS-enabled map capability. Of course, right now, as you know, if we have multiple WAWAs, in effect, one covers the other. It's just a static image. So we are going to go to a GIS-enabled capability, and I'm not going to figure that one out because that's way out of my bailiwick. I want to call on some really smart people, including our partners, to figure out how we show this new system. How do we display urgency, severity, and certainty? Can we have multiple tabs? You know, so there's a lot of work there. Next piece, within our office, the Analyze, Forecast, and Support office, we need to redo all of our policy because, as you know, many of you know, there's watches, warnings, and advisories all over that policy with criteria and such. And this is an opportunity to really re-envision these policy directives with a focus towards impact-based decision support instead of criteria-based products. And so that's going to be a challenge. Then there's the training for our forecasters. Then there's the outreach for the general public. There's more work left to be done than it's already been done, as I think about it. So,
yeah. Sorry, I reminded you.
Yeah. Well, you know, but it's all really interesting and it's important, and it will require the community to continue. And the community is not just in the Weather Service; it extends to you guys and to help us collect the feedback and the ideas that we need to make this really work well.
He left out one thing, Troy. Go, James.
I was going to say, anytime you make a change, Eli, you're going to make some people mad. I mean, this is not easy. So just trust me, you have a lot of people that support what you do. So don't let the haters get to you.
Send them to James. James will set them straight for you.
It ain't broke, don't fix it. Yeah, we hear that all the time.
Yeah, if it ain't broke, don't fix it.
Yeah. So Troy left out one thing: the Weather Service needs an app.
Yeah, and Eli, I've said that, and I've said it to Louis, and I've said it to other people all along that we could still have an app and be within the mission statement of the National Weather Service. I really believe that, because the mission of the Weather Service is to warn against atmospheric hazards, protect life and property, and prepare general forecasts. So I think an app would be nice. And I'll tell you what, Eli, I'll let us get through this first. We can go for the app second. Okay.
Yeah,
that's a good deal.
Okay.
I really appreciate you letting me off the hook for that one, Troy. That's good.
Okay.
I took up Python programming over the weekend, so I'll throw in a few 100 lines of code for you there along the way, Eli. I'm glad you mentioned NOAA Weather Radio too, because we're really excited because Midland has joined us as a sponsor. They'll start next week. Bruce Jones is going to join us every week.
Great.
And that's going to be really fun. So it'll be exciting to see how they fit into all that. I know you're not getting into the SPC and all that, or any kind of new products that would like bridge the gap between the risk and watches, or is there anything you want to say about any of that, Eli, before we talk to Alex about some of his research?
Well, what I would say is that that's part of our policy. So as in the Forecast Services Division, we have 11 service programs. Severe weather is one of them, and so those risk categories fall into our national product specifications. And so I'm very interested in it. I know there's a lot of discussion about it, so I'm really interested to stick around and hear the discussion.
Outstanding. Well, Alex, you part of your senior project, I don't know if that's the right word, whether it's a thesis or maybe you can describe the project that you worked on. I knew capstone's sort of an Alabama word. I didn't like to use that word. Talking across the board.
Yeah, we borrowed it for class. Technically it's the senior level capstone class, but I came into school with a bunch of credit, so I was a little ahead in my coursework. So I ended up taking the class as a second semester junior, so this past spring. And the project is actually a result of coronavirus, because I don't think it would have been done if we weren't out of school. But I had to pick something to do a survey on. And so I decided, I watch people all around the country on TV, and nobody presents the SPC outlook the same way. Everybody's got their own unique little way to do it. So I was sitting there thinking to myself, that everybody knows that the words aren't enough. They don't convey exactly what you want them to convey, because some people are putting numbers on it and some people are dropping the words all together and using like low to high and other things. So I decided to see what the public thought the hierarchy of words was. So in the survey, I presented the list of words randomized and asked people to rank them from 1 to 5 from the least to most threatening. And I got a result that I kind of expected in some sense and not so much in another. So if I really can't, really quick, I want to share.
Yeah, please do. Please share it.
Share screen. Let's see if it'll let me. It says host has disabled attendee screen sharing.
Yeah, so I'll keep showing all these pictures of bad things, so we had to.
But I can just run through it really quick. So the perceived order from least to most threatening was slight as 1, marginal as 2, moderate being 3, enhanced as 4, and high as 5.
Say that again.
So only
And by
only
the way,
one was in the right place.
Try the
Slight
screen share
marginal.
again.
Okay.
Alex, try the screen share again. See if you can do it now.
There are 2 pairs that get flipped. Flip slight and marginal, and flip moderate and enhanced.
So can you
That's
see
what
that?
the public does.
Right. And again, most people listen to this show, so we'll have to kind of describe everything. But for
Yes.
those that are watching, I wanted to be able to show it. So there, it looks good.
Yeah. And there are the percentages also with each threat level. So the other thing I wanted, the key takeaway is that each threat level has a different rate of agreeability, if you will. So for example, 57% of people see slight as the first ranking, whereas 61% of people see moderate as the third, most threatening level there. So this was, like I said, I was expecting it and not so much in another aspect. The slight and marginal was the one that really surprised me. I really thought that people were going to think that marginal was the first or the least threatening of those words. But moderate makes sense because it starts with an M, and so does middle. And people kind of think of moderate as the in-between between low and high, which is how the SPC outlook was up until 2014, before the marginal and enhanced were added. But yeah, only high was in the same spot, and 82.2% of people saw high as the most threatening. So the other thing I wanted to hit on with this slide is, everybody's gut reaction whenever they see this information is, oh, we got to change it. And most people's perception of change is, well, we just need to flip the words into the order that the public sees them as. But if you do that, you are going to cause more confusion, because not everybody's going to know that a change occurred, right? What happens when, Sally down the street sees a moderate, and now all of a sudden that's a level 3, and she's confused because on the TV graphics it shows you as orange versus red, how it was before, and there's so many different ways to interpret it. So instead, what I'm advocating for is just drop the words altogether. Do what we do with like tornadoes and hurricanes, with the enhanced Fujita scale, with the Saffir-Simpson scale. I know this isn't exactly like those in how it would be presented, but it already has an established 1 to 5 hierarchy. I mean, think about this. How many times have you been asked, is an EF1 tornado worse than an EF5? Everybody knows an EF5 is going to be the worst because it's the highest on the scale. Same with a hurricane. Everybody in Florida asks, well, is it going to be a category 5? It's an inevitable question that's going to come, and that is based off of their perception of 5 being the highest threat to them. So I did hit on this also briefly. I just wanted to show this. I caution whenever people advocate for change as well, that the convective outlooks, and I'm sure almost all you know this, are not meant for the public. They never were, and they still technically aren't designed for the public today. Their public severe weather outlooks are issued on high risk, or not necessarily high, but on a impactful weather day. And because of that, the public understanding of it is not necessarily most important, because NOAA is not designing these maps based on public, they're designing it for meteorologists. So that's where a lot of the words came from. And I just also wanted to highlight that I don't think it's any one person's fault that the words don't line up. It was simply a change that occurred at the SPC to try to make it better. That bumped moderate to 4, whereas it was 3 to begin with. It was that middle one, and the slight and was condensed into the lower end slight, and then the marginal was added from the CTEC. So it was a complicated change that ended up into this kind of issue, which the survey I did, my goal was to validate a belief that the words didn't work, And that was pretty much the end goal. And that's just a piece of a larger picture. And I have to thank James for sharing the survey, because I had almost 4,000 responses, and the average for a senior capstone project is around 100. But also everybody else who shared it across the Southeast, because even though I had 4,000 responses, only 2,000 of those were from Alabama. So it was shared widespread all the way from Arkansas to the Carolinas and Kentucky to Florida.
And this is pretty weather savvy territory too. It's pretty saturated with this information, Alex.
Yeah, and one other thing I forgot to mention is that this survey, and this was by pure coincidence, it was not on purpose. It ran the week after the tornadoes occurred in southern Mississippi. So everybody is somewhat aware of, and keeping up with the weather during that time. So I think that aided a lot, because they could draw on previous events and what they did, and give a almost real-time response to their perception of it.
Do you think, Alex, that the change happened in 2014, some of the numbers that looked like those pairs that were a little flipped were part of the new numbers or the new terms that were introduced? Do you think that's some dynamic involved there, maybe with education over time? And Kim can comment to this, because she has a question also here in just a second. But maybe that's going to equalize over time, do you think, or is that confusion going to always be there?
So I am a subscriber to the thought of people thinking threes, and you can't effectively teach an order unless it's in threes. The standard view of this is low, medium, high, right? A stoplight, green, yellow, red. I don't see a scenario where you can convince somebody that enhanced, or somebody who already does not agree with this, that enhanced is worse than moderate, because it's their perception of the word. Just to kind of circle back to a point, Eli was talking about Spanish in the past. These words in Spanish, if you ran a survey on them, I'm sure this would be, even more chaos than what we have existing today. So I don't know. My response to that, I guess, would be, why would we focus on education when we can just dump the words all together and do numbers, so that there is no language barrier? It's easier for the sign language community, the people who can't hear, or they're not necessarily reading something. Whenever you need to sign something, it's hard to establish that order. And numbers are a universal language. They are understood across the board. So I don't think there's a perfect solution, but I think there's work that could be done.
Alex, I've got a question for you. Well, are you already seeing, to some degree, and I know I'm doing it now more and more, but are you already seeing where broadcasters are using the number scale somewhat and saying, well, there's an enhanced risk, by the way, that is 3 out of 5. I know I'm starting to do it a little more just to avoid confusion.
Yeah, and I'm glad you mentioned that. So before I came on tonight, I also went and grabbed some images, and I did it from James's DMA, just so that you can see what a viewer could see on any given severe weather event. Now, these aren't all the same event. These are just all the maps I could find that are recent that show the stations in Birmingham's and how they present it. You see, James uses a number scale. He doesn't have.
Yeah, words. I'm a numbers scale. Let me just say, amen, brother. Amen. Preach on. Amen. I think numbers are easy. The EF scale, this Saffir-Simpson scale, and it's not the same thing, but yet people understand those stinking numbers, and we do away with those words, and they get it. So I'm on your side, Alex.
Pass the offering plate.
Yeah. And this is where I'm gonna actually, Bill teed up with his question too. He teed up perfectly something that I was going to mention with asking, will this get better over time? Unfortunately, we kind of know the answer, because when I was a grad student, this was being considered, this whole proposal. And I ran a survey with some folks at the Storm Prediction Center, where we queried the public to see what would they naturally do with the words And sadly, the outcome was exactly what you found. Nothing has changed since 2012. So what, similar to the conversation that we were having earlier with Eli about, the uptake of the advisory, I think if in 8 years, like a 7 or so since implementation of this, if the order that's perceived hasn't changed, then I think that we haven't, had the societal uptake. But part of the reason why SPC went ahead with the proposal anyway, and this is going to be the second piece of bad news, I think, Alex, for your proposal, is that their audience, it's in part meteorologists, yes, but it's also emergency management. And what they were responding to when they created these additional scales was the desire of emergency managers to disambiguate the slight risk category. They knew that a lot of emergency managers were being really responsive to moderate and up. But there was a lot of confusion on slight risk days where really severe things could happen. They just maybe wouldn't be as widespread. And this is where the category system gets really complicated. It's trying to do 2 things at once. It's trying to communicate both the potential severity and the potential coverage in one linear category. And I think that's where you can't really do that, at least not something that's clean. And that's where advisory failed. I mean, advisory was the exact same problem. We were trying to give, different gradations of severity in one scale. So we were making it multidimensional, and that's essentially what's happening here too. So for the emergency management community, as I understand it from SPC, while they did have to do some learning, what meant what, they have been more responsive now to enhanced risks. And there have been cases where they would have missed something that used to be categorized as a slight that now they are preparing for a little bit more. So one of the questions I think that your project raises, recognizing that, okay, on the public side, nothing has really changed, is should we be showing this to the public at all? We don't necessarily need to ditch the system. I think we just need to have the system think about who's transmitting to whom. It doesn't have to be that everything that the Weather Service produces goes out to the public exactly that way. It could be that some of it goes to its partners. And this is actually something we're thinking about with the Facets program too, with probabilities. It might be that some of that content goes to the partners, and maybe some content in a slightly different form, maybe the numbers form, like you suggest, is what goes out to the public. It looks like Eli and others have comments on that.
Wow. Yeah. First of all, Alex, I want to really congratulate you on this work. This is very, very important to have done this survey. And if you don't mind, I would love to see your slides, if you don't mind emailing them to me.
Sure, absolutely.
And I'd like to discuss them with our severe program. One of the biggest challenges that we're facing with this is there's urgency, severity, and certainty, right? But then there's risk, and all these different quantities. So James, when we were looking at when Alex showed your map earlier, what is red, orange, and I don't recall the other colors, but what do they mean? Is the red area where the storms are going to be heaviest? Is it where there's the highest chance of storms? What does the word risk mean, in this context? And just one more thing to throw into the soup, and Kim, you'll remember this from the early days of the research. The only issue with the numbering scale is it ace high or ace low. That's the only problem that we found in the HAZCEM project and in considering numbers. So this is a tremendous challenge. And as you said, James, don't even start on probabilities, and try, so, but Alex, this is great work, and I'd love to see it. And I think this is worth a look, and then, I think the Storm Prediction Center, would be interested in having the discussion. I'd be happy to engage that.
But while you got this up here, Alex, let me just say this about, I don't want to brag, but I'll brag on our market. Look at the consistency in the colors, I mean, we worked on this. True. We really did. We got together and we worked on colors. We don't hate each other. We get in the same room. We speak. We like each other. And while the graphics are different, and again, these are not the same days. These are different events. But look at your, if you use numbers or categories, the colors are the same. You start with marginal, which is, the darker green, then it runs up to this pink, which is high. So at least we tried to do that. But in other markets, you all, they don't use these SPC products. They kind of do, but they use their own terms. They completely veer away from these numbers and these terms. And I'm not faulting anybody that does this, but it would be nice per market if we could do what we're trying to do here and create some consistency. And if nothing else, colors. Use the same crayons, boys and girls. We can do this.
James, it's really interesting you bring that up. I'm not sure how many of you know Castle Williams at UGA. He's a good guy. Yep. Yeah, he did his PhD research on this, and the one key takeaway he had is whenever you're presenting these SPC graphics and you're looking for consistency, you can alter it a little, make it your own. But he said the one thing that everybody should do is keep the colors consistent and don't alter the regions. You can adjust the wording and label them a little differently depending on where you are and how you want to present it. But as long as you keep those two key items the same, then they will be far better understood from a consistency standpoint, as opposed to changing the pink to white. I will also bring up, not to fault anybody again on this, the fact that the Birmingham DMA does this is fantastic, because I can rattle off probably 10 markets I know right now, Atlanta being one of them, my home market here, that there is slight variation. And I've had people ask me, I watch this on Channel 2 and I watch this on Fox 5 and they're not the same. And it's the same SPC outlook. It's just that Channel 2 is using a gradient red, whereas Fox 5 is using a green. And they're like, well, I'm in the red area here, so I guess they're forecasting a worse storm for me. And it's all over the board. But yeah, that was one of the key takeaways. And the other thing that I wanted to hit on just with the graphics here, that there's an interesting mix in Birmingham that I think is like this across the board in terms of labeling, aside from the colors. So James uses only numbers. You see there, I think it's WBRC, they use numbers and the abbreviated words. The one thing I didn't look at this, that I think I'd be interested to know is, do people understand the abbreviations? I don't know how many people you're going to go find to ask them what mod means. I think it's clear to us it means moderate, but somebody who's not looking at weather information every day might not see it that way. Well, I don't know what they would.
Well, I was just gonna say, something that you do in all of these graphics that's wonderful and helpful to the audiences is, even if they don't know what those words mean, they have they have the legend. You're showing them, oh, here's the decoder ring, if you have that, we get so hung up on these things like words, when we give people so much more. The information in coding is actually quite rich. We have numbers, we have colors, we have, as a system together. My question I'll pose to you, Alex, or any future work you're interested in doing, and for the people listening, is where the rubber meets the road, does this cause confusion or lack of action when we want action? Where is there a breakdown with the way that it's packaged as a whole? When they hear about this from their broadcasters, what key messages are they carrying away? And this is part of why I've wrestled with this idea too, of what should we do with the SPC categories. And personally, what I come to is much like the perspective I ended up coming to with watches and warnings. If people, when push comes to shove in real world situations, can figure out what we're trying to say, which is what we've found for watch and warning, they can intuit the difference in real time because they have all these other cues that help them to understand what's going on. If that can happen too for SPC information, if that's what's going on, I don't think that the problem is as bad as we think it is. It's one piece of the puzzle. It doesn't help that we don't have a nice linear 5-word scale. It really does. It's not like it's helping us. But is it really hurting us as badly as we think it is? What do you think about that?
Yeah. So, so just for background here, I was an intern at Fox 5 here in Atlanta last summer. So part of what I did was working with their graphics, and I kind of raised that point to David Chanley, who I worked with, and asked, I understand the numbering, but don't people see it in this order with, from green to pink, and see this as a, an increasing threat? And he was quick to say no. Like, I had to put numbers on here because all people would do is ask questions. Because, I didn't really think about this, but the way he described it was, in most everybody's everyday life, whenever they're presented with a grouping of words, they're not necessarily in any kind of order. They're just there. So even though the legend up on top of the screen, I use channel 13 there in Birmingham as an example, because they don't use numbers. They have a green box with a word and then a yellow box with a word. They're having trouble deciphering, well, I think red is worse than pink. So does that mean that my threat is lower than the pink area? It raises all sorts of confusion that I think is unnecessary. And it happened with the 2014 outlook, because we went from that grouping of 3, the slight, moderate, high, to now a group of words that could be perceived in different ways. The good analogy that I think he used was, whenever you have a word search and you have a word bank, that's how people perceive it on the graphics from his perspective.
Broadcasters, you guys are in such a tough spot for trying to get that feedback in and understand what it means, because you're always going to hear from the squeaky wheels, and this is something I know I've talked about on the show too. A lot of broadcasters here in this panel, it's really hard to know, if this works for 95% of the people, and all I hear about is from the 5% who are like, wait, well, where am I on the map? Or wait, what does that color mean? You're going to hear about the people who complain. It's really hard as a broadcaster.
Hard. And the deal is, Kim, my deal, back when I was on the road, and I've not been on the road since March. But if I'm in Fayette, Alabama, guess what I'm going to do? I'm going to go in the Dollar General and ask questions. That's my research place, is Walmarts and Dollar Generals, where real people are that consume our products and services, and ask them to be really honest about this stuff. And where I am, a lot of people are just nice when you're in person, when they look you in the eyes. But if you're not there, they'll gripe about it. And it's hard to sort this stuff out. It really is. But I think part of it is that we're paid to be communicators. That's why we're here. If you just take these SPC products straight to the public, then who needs us? We have to be able to take that information and do a really good job of explaining it in the best way we can, whether we're using numbers or categories or just descriptive terms. So we got to take those graphics, which we show on television, but we have to go way beyond that. And I think that's part of the value that we should bring to the table for these television stations and for the weather enterprise. So, we'll just roll with the flow, but we've got to be communicators.
And something to build off of that, I know a station here in Atlanta, they try to dump the graphics altogether to the SPC outlook. They wanted to be primarily threat driven, so that they could say, Northeast Georgia, expect tornadoes, damaging winds up to 70 miles an hour, small hail. Metro Atlanta, expect tornadoes, damaging wind up to 80 miles an hour. Base it off of that. And the feedback they got was, where's the map? You've been showing us this map now for years, going back beyond 2014, before that change occurred. And they want to know specifically what area they're in. And I think they went through 2 or 3 events without showing the map, and they went back to it real fast. Because once you plant the seed with the viewer, they're going to want to see it for any given event. And if you don't have it, they're going to go somewhere else to find it. And they will always be able to find it, because it will always be there and somebody will always be showing it.
Yeah, that horse is out of the barn. You talk about putting some of these SPC products back in the secret hiding place where the public can't see it. That's not going to happen. It's out there.
Blame the Today Show on that.
Alex, there's one other thing too, and I probably shouldn't bring this up here, but in some CWAs, the local weather service office differs in opinion with the SPC on outlooks. And that makes it really hard on us. Yep. And I love them all. Kevin Laws, one of my best friends, like the brother I never had, the Sioux here. You go to Norman and you got Patrick Marsh and, Rich Thompson and John Hart and these brilliant people. And it just makes it hard sometimes. And that's the other thing is that I wish that sometimes I wish we could just have a meeting somewhere. We'll meet in Tupelo, Mississippi. And let's bring everybody into a room and see if we can work out the differences and see if we can come up with a way to be consistent in the products being produced by the local offices in the Storm Prediction Center. And Alex, I don't know if you've done any research on that one or not, but in fact, I've got a photo file on my, iCloud drive called Confusion. And it's all these tweets and, emails and Facebook messages and Instagram messages from people that say, hey, you're showing this map, and I just saw this map from the National Weather Service, and it's not the same. Who am I supposed to believe here? So, I love all these guys. They're all my buddies. They're all smart. They're brilliant people.
I don't have any numbers behind it, but I completely agree based off what I've seen. And it makes it hard, especially for meteorologists who are on social media, because I use Jackson, Mississippi as an example, because they're our forecast office for Starkville. And they put out their number scale that they have just generically. Like if it's a level 1 day, it's a low impact day. If it's a level 2 day, it's okay, there's some stuff going on, but that could be storms, that could be winter weather. It's just an arbitrary number based on the impact. And it makes it difficult for other meteorologists on Twitter, because what happens in a severe weather day where you've got, Jackson out there saying they have a different region of a level 4, but the SPC has an enhanced over the area. And it's happened several times. Now, I'm not, knocking NWS Jackson. It's just, that's what's out there. And it becomes hard to have a consistent message, because at the end of the day, that's what it comes down to, is consistency and portraying the threats and it's not necessarily a good thing to have two different regions with two different descriptors on them. But yeah, I don't have any numbers, but wholeheartedly agree.
But Alex,
we just got to meet. We got to meet somewhere and talk about this.
But Alex and Eli, both of you, I can understand where you're coming from, but it sounds like, Eli, that the impact stuff may be more impact-based stuff being developed by the local office, whereas the severe weather outlook or the SPC outlook is more that severe weather threat, and whereas the impact may include flooding, which SPC discussions wouldn't. But I don't think anyone could said any better, like James did, that again, you're not being consistent. And I think the impact-based threats, Kim, you've got to look at that, because that's what affects the people at the house.
James, I remember an email thread you had several years ago on this proposal to get together and agree on colors, and I'm really supportive of that. I think that's something, in fact, that we're thinking about it in our programs about consistent colors and depiction of threats. But Alex said something at the very beginning when he was speaking, which is that these things are now getting out to the general public. Unfortunately, what happened about 15 years ago was this invention called the internet, right? Because these things really weren't intended for the general public, way back. They were intended for us to be able to communicate, and now they're everywhere. And so I think it may have been Kim who mentioned, should everything go out? Well, I mean, it's hard to make a judgment on that, but I think that the goal to have consistent from the local and national levels, we call it a collaborative forecast process. This is a big goal of ours in the Weather Service to get this act together so that we're more consistent in this way. So this is a great discussion.
Well, Eli, too, and this is something I think James and I would agree with, the worst thing to ever get out of Pandora's box were the spaghetti models for the tropical weather. Because, by God, the public understands that, and there are people in emergency management that don't understand that sometimes.
But I can remember a day when the tropical cyclone discussions had for intergovernment use only at the top of them, and they guarded those things with their lives. And now I think they're part of the process of helping, address the uncertainty and a lot of other types. Don't you think they become sort of a win? I mean, they're out there and they get used to a lot. Kim, would you agree or disagree with that?
Oh yeah, no, I totally agree.
Kind of a naive approach.
Having done some work looking at the hurricane cone of uncertainty and seeing the research that's been done on it, people think that they want a product like the spaghetti diagrams. They think that it means the uncertainty endemic to this particular storm and it's where its track might go. And as much as the spaghetti diagrams, yeah, they have their failures and flaws and interpretations that we need to be careful about. There's certain things we know are out to lunch and so on. They do a better job conveying one attribute people actually are wanting, and that is, what is the range of possibilities for this storm? And, I know that models are only, models, right? So they're not necessarily giving the full envelope of what's possible, but they're doing it more than the cone of uncertainty is. And so you find that frequently people seek those out in addition to the cone to get that context. So yeah, I totally sympathize with, the internet has made some things, the cat can't go back in the bag. Like it's kind of out there in the world. What do we do with it now? I think we should ask that question very sincerely of what are people doing with it now? Try to get that you get the numbers, Alex, like you were saying, to really know. I think, you've highlighted there's some complexity here. We've created some products that we think will do some stuff. Maybe we can give it to the public that way. Maybe we can't. But I remember, I reflect, Eli, on the early part of HasSimp. One of the things that you wanted to possibly do was scrape watch and warning too, because they sound so similar. And we started with this fundamentally flawed product. And we walked through a process where, we found that there were a lot of complicating factors with getting rid of watch and warning, and that actually it worked for a lot of people in a lot of ways. Mm-hmm. The question you ended up asking that I think is a really wise question is, what could do better than this? And it sounds really simple to say we can throw this out and then everything will be fixed, but you've got to replace it with something. And Eli, can you speak a little bit to, when you tried to replace even those terms, what did you find through that process?
Well, it's a great comment, Kim. I think the bottom line is there are no perfect words. And that's what we found. We actually were testing notice in our generalizable public survey where, we really invested in this and we got a good generalizable public sample. The word notice seemed to test pretty well for watch, but then we took it to the to Norman and we asked the forecast office, so tornado notice, how do you like that? And I went, wow, no, we can't use that. I mean, people will think there's a tornado around the corner, And so it's really interesting how what we ended up doing and what the research led us to was to just drop one of the terms rather than try and come up with new ones. One more comment about color is that in Europe, of course, they use meteor alarm, and they never did any real social science on that before they introduced it. That's the yellow warning, the orange warning, and the red warning, and that's what they use in Europe. Now, one thing we always say is their hazards are not quite as diverse as they are here. That's one issue. But we did test red warning for snow. You could have a lot of fun with this one, right? Yellow warning for snow. You know where that's going. But that wasn't the problem. The problem is that the color in and of itself was not descriptive enough. It didn't. And by the way, different agencies use different colors for different types of hazards. And by the way, emergency managers have their own color coded system, like code red, code orange, code blue, whatever they use, and so it really failed. But color as a supplemental attribute is something that we're going to be looking at. So James, this goes back to what you've been saying about getting us in a padded room. I remember your email and wherever that is, and having this conversation and getting the public and the private sector together and the national and the local and see what we can do. But I'll come back to what I said earlier, though. I'll just give you my opinion on this. And this is sort of where HasSimp has gone. I think you want to focus when communicating on severity. You have to pick one. We learned with the Wild West system is you can't convey severity and certainty with three terms. That's the fundamental thing we learned. So you have to pick one. So you have urgency, severity, certainty. Then you have this kind of fuzzy word risk. And I think if you give people a color scale that is a stoplight scale, as was discussed earlier, as Alex said, that's something they can probably relate to. So kind of, okay, yellow, orange, red, purple was used very, very frequently for extreme. You could do it that way with certainty, but that's just my opinion. And there's a lot of use for different types of scales. So maybe you have them on different tabs of a web page. I'm just throwing out stuff, but I mean, this will be part of the discussion, James, I think, that we could have.
So when is the what's your timeline, Eli, in terms of making decisions and implementing them?
The timeline for the decision is coming up pretty soon. I'm going to be taking a final proposal to our leadership in the next 6 weeks or so. We're still gathering the data, so it's a little bit of a sprint, but a lot of the data is already in, so we're analyzing furiously, and we have a few more surveys to do. But after that, I envision 2 to 3 years before the full proposal is implemented. But along the way, James, and I remember NWA talk you gave one year about all the flood advisories and such. The flood consolidation and reformatting is coming in the next months, and as soon as we can get the hazard services aligned and ready to accept it. So we're going to continue our repair. We're going to shrink our product suite a little bit more. I talked about the extreme cold and extreme heat, so that will align instead of excessive heat. So excessive heat's going to go away, because to me, excessive means that there was just enough heat. So what kind of heat is that? So, extreme heat is, I think, a better term, and aligns with extreme cold. So this is really kind of a renaming and a reformatting and a consolidation. And then, all this is worthwhile work, because then when you remove advisory and just go to the plain language statements, you've already got the whole infrastructure built, and you just replace the advisory with the plain language statements.
This is fast tracked, really. I mean, months and years. That's, a few months for the flood advisories and flood changes, and a couple of years for the whole package. That's pretty fast for the Weather Service.
Well, we've been working on it for quite some time, so we're finally reaching the point where these things are going to start rolling out as hazard services rolls out. And so that's very exciting to all of us. So just, I remember Gina once said that even if you did nothing but this consolidation and reformatting, that's a huge change in and of itself. That in and of itself is a big win. This proposal to do away with advisory, which has quite a lot of legs based on the feedback we've gotten, it's a big deal, and we have to treat it like the big deal that it is, in terms of our education outreach and treating it with great care, and treating the partners with great care, taking their feedback, working with them, and making sure it can be as good as it can be.
Awesome. So I just got this. Yeah, go ahead, Alex. Go.
Yeah, I was going to just add something. One, the advisory going away would be fantastic, because I'm not sure how. I know everybody remembers this, but I just want to highlight it. When Atlanta shut down in 2014, it was because the winter storm watch shifted to a winter weather advisory. And people thought, oh, there's no more winter storm, right? It's gone. It's just an advisory.
That's right.
And, I was among those high schoolers who went to school that morning, and I texted my dad at 10:30 to come check me out, because I knew exactly what was about to happen. And sure enough, it took me even an hour to get home with what should have been a 10-minute drive, but I know people who spent the night on the interstate, and that is a direct result of an advisory, being issued. But it was the correct product for it. It just, an inch of snow will do that to you when you live in the South.
So, did y'all see that message I got from one of the news managers next door?
I mean, 16 minutes for weather tonight, James.
And I love the little subject line says crisis. We are having.
Is that the same as a warning? Yeah.
That's above a warning.
It's an emergency.
Exactly.
High risk.
We're having major computer crisis. May have to have you fill up a lot of time and weather tonight. So with that being the case, let me roll the Tony Rice report.
Send you a weather story and a photo if you want.
Yeah.
Watch James and streaming and just the James show.
Yeah, man. I said I'll talk all night. Just turn that thing on. So let's roll Tony Rice, and I'm going to have to walk next door and see what's going on here. So Bill, you take it out of this. So here's Tony and the astronomy report. We'll come back with picks of the week and much more as Weather Brains rolls along.
Looking beyond the atmosphere, here's Tony Rice with your astronomy outlook.
Saturn reaches opposition today. That's the point in its orbit where it is exactly opposite of the sun in our skies. It's also generally when the planets are closest and they're brightest. Like full moons, which also occur when the moon is exactly opposite of the sun, Saturn rises at sunset and is visible until sunrise. Jupiter was at opposition last week, so look for it in the southeast, just to the right of Saturn, shining even brighter. The new moon also occurred today, which means Saturn, Earth, the moon, and then the sun are all lined up in a row. Comet Neowise is still visible in the northwestern evening sky, this week during more pleasant evening hours. Look about halfway between the horizon and the Big Dipper, about an hour and a half after sunset. Each evening it starts out a little bit higher in the sky, making it easier to see above the tree line, but it's also getting dimmer. So if you put this off, you might be disappointed. For where and when to look from your location, visit neowise.whatsupin.space for a little tool that does the calculations for you. That's your Astronomy Outlook. Follow me at RTP Hokie for more spacey stuff like this.
I think Harry Cantaloupe is the leader in the clubhouse. There's no question for the show title. In a show that's been packed with show titles, I would have to say. But, I got a call, because I get the calls that come into the blog. James named one of our shows something about women who named their butt cheeks or something. I think it was reference to a Jerry Springer show or something. And I got so many nasty calls about that. They thought we had been hacked. One lady from Coleman thought we had been hacked. And I just let her believe that because, it was a terrible hack. I think it was some Russian bots. I didn't tell her it was a sixth grader that's otherwise known as Alabama's meteorologist. had named our show that, and somehow it had made it onto our blog as that. So I just changed the title to something a little less crazy. So, Kim, I just had to tell you every time, I use Grammarly. It's this add-on, that checks all my, everything I write. It has good suggestions for grammar and checks all my spelling words, even fixes, it really likes me because I have one of these 2018 MacBook Pros that has the terrible butterfly keyboard or whichever one is bad. So it like adds letters and doesn't add letters. And so when you get all these typos from me, I'm not drunk or losing my mind. It's an Apple keyboard that I can't get to the Apple store to replace because it's closed. But in any way, I look on the Grammarly for a setting that says, how would Kim say it? Because I think sometimes when I'm writing on the blog, how would Kim say this? You used a word tonight, disambiguate. And I probably didn't even say it right, Kim, but you always just know exactly how to say things so concisely and succinctly. It just blows my mind.
Can I share a really funny story? So all of that is a credit to my mother, who, she was raised by working class people, and she just, when she was little, she just decided, this is the thing I'm going to focus on, and I am going to learn language and be, she's kind of a perfectionist about it. And so when we were growing up, we had, I've been this way for a very long time. So now my parents are watching my daughter, who she's not even 2 years old. And this little girl has we'll just say it's a broad spanning vocabulary. And it's just amazing. Like, I am what happens when my mother had, she worked overnights in a hospital when I was growing up and just such a hard worker. I don't know if she ever slept. And if I had that much of her energy, my daughter has her full time now, just how much more she's going to be. So I'll bring her on, in like 5-6 years, and you guys can all revel in the vocabulary. But yeah, this is totally a credit to my mom. It was very intentionally baked into me.
Nice.
That is really cool. Now, Alex, this week I noticed on Facebook, different things that come up now that are politicized are so crazy. But you got into a discussion about some issues that were sort of political. That's probably not the first time that sort of happened for you on social media. Does that? Do events like that make you pull back from discussing things like that, or are you just going to keep full charging right into stuff like that as a young, person who's in the middle of the public eye in meteorology?
So the thing that has me up in arms is going back to school. I don't really see it as a political issue. I see it as the health issue.
Exactly.
You know, I'm not going to get into the should masks be mandated, should, you know, we shut down. I'm getting into, I'm about to go back to Starkville with 20,000 of my closest friends from around the country, and we're all going to be in the same building in the middle of August in Mississippi with the AC running, pumping air through the rooms. So, you know, to me, it's of A, personal interest, but B, also interest of the city of Starkville, because if we have an outbreak of coronavirus in Northeast Mississippi, that is entirely different than having an outbreak of coronavirus in Metro Atlanta, because the hospital beds per capita in Northeast Mississippi are not what they are in you know, here in Georgia. So, you know, I'll throw my 2 cents in where I think it's worth it. And, you know, I don't see a lot of college students publicly talking about it. Privately, like among my friends, we're all like, what are they doing? Like, you know, are we really about to do this? So, you know, like I said, I'll throw my 2 cents in when I think it's worth something. But, you know, I was talking to somebody the other day who was a decision maker in a process like this, and I raised questions that he didn't have the answer to, and he never thought of.
Right.
So as long as I'm able to, I'll always throw something in if I think it's beneficial.
Well, good for you. I admired your stand and what you had to say. Our children, for our children, we had to make a decision by Wednesday whether they go back to school full time or whether they take the virtual model. Our school system, and y'all seen the gentleman who's really super, you know, on this show from our school system, who is really into the weather, and they've done a really, really good job. But, you know, 99% of our kids are going to want to go back to school.
Yeah.
I'm be shocked if more than 5% of the parents, you know, choose the virtual model here.
I actually have an interesting data point for you there. Fulton County here in Georgia, so now they are all online until further notice for the fall. But before that decision was made, they gave parents the option, and 46% of parents elected for their kids to go virtual. So much so that Fulton County sent an email out to all their teachers asking more teachers to sign up to teach online, because they didn't have the teacher capacity to keep up with the kids that were wanting to move online.
Well, that's good to know.
You know,
nobody wants to open the economy more than me. And I don't know how in the world you could think it's a political decision.
You know, if I may, far be it from me to stick my nose into a hornet's nest, but I don't mind doing it every once in a while. You know, the thing that I admire Alex for his critical thought there.
Absolutely.
And, you know, that's the problem, is that we are not a critically thinking country right now in the United States. It's either one way or the damn other. And it's just, and there's no critical thought given to it. And, you know, even when I talk to my students, and I'm teaching an online class now here at the university, you know, first day in, I said, one thing we're going to learn how to do this semester, we're going to talk about, is critical thought, because at the University of Texas, believe it or not, critical thought is in our mission statement. But I'm going to tell you, for places that have it in the mission statement, including the University of Texas, they don't do necessarily a good job in getting that out to the students. And I think we're going to have to, in this country, get beyond all this crap and get back to critical thought and be able to go from there. Now, I will tell you this much, Alex, I think you win with this. I think that in the next few weeks, we're not going to see many schools anywhere in the United States that are going back to anything but online. That's my gut feeling, involved in a little bit of emergency management and things like that. I think you're critically thinking, Alex.
And you know, the clock is ticking. You know, Mississippi State move-in starts August 5th. That is
right.
After
we
next.
Start August the 8th.
Yeah. And you know, I fully appreciate everything that the university leadership has done to try to make this work. You know, they have released a 20-page guide on how they want to run things. And, you know, everything they thought of is fantastic. I just don't think that it's feasible. You know, as much as I hate to admit it, you're going to have students on campus shooting their masks at each other. Yeah. It is inevitable.
Well, the problem with this, Alex, is, and God, I know I'm getting myself in trouble now, is that universities have a lot of people that are great at creating websites. They're great at creating documents and PDFs, but they aren't necessarily good at critical thought.
Yeah.
Sorry, but that just is the way that it is. So,
yeah. Well, I guess we'll all have the answer to how everything's going to work here within a couple of weeks. And,
right.
I hope, Troy, I know you saw Texas, there, a news article that came out of there that somebody raised the prospects of what would it take for a shutdown to happen mid-semester. So everybody comes back to Austin, they start class, and then what is it going to take to send everybody home? And the first thing listed there was the death of a student.
Yep. And I saw that. And I again, more and more, I have to give credit to UT. Most of the classes now for the fall at the University of Texas are now online. If they're not, there's some type of hybrid class, which can be changed over pretty quickly and going from there. But I'd be willing to bet in many places, I do not speak to the University of Texas. Please understand that.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I just think that a lot of places you're going to see online classes because it will be the intelligent thing to do at some point.
And, it raises an interesting point. Online classes are great and all, but how does that solve a dorm full of students sharing a bathroom?
No, the dorm full of students in a bathroom is a disaster waiting to happen.
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
And, I use UGA as an example here in Georgia because that's how I think 70% of their dorms are. So, I could go on and on. My head's been wrapped around this for 3 weeks but we'll see.
Stay safe.
Congratulations on being a person with critical thought.
Thank you.
Stay safe. We need you to keep working on that SPC stuff.
Exactly. Well, it's been a great show tonight, Elon, Alex. Thank you again for joining us. I knew it was going to be a fantastic show, but it even exceeded my expectations. I guess we better get to some picks of the week.
Yeah.
I don't think I warned our guests, but I think they're familiar enough with the show to know, but we'll come to them last here. Jen Nairmore, I know you got a great pick of the week for us.
I do. Article from my alma mater, Penn State, it's entitled "Knowledge of Severe Storm Patterns May Improve Tornado Warnings." And it's just an interesting research, and it's all about looking at radar and the shape and size of raindrops and how maybe that could help us with supercell detection. Pretty cool.
Well, as soon as you make a pick of the week, you have to get the guests that did the paper on it. So you have 2 weeks to have them here. But the good news is we don't have any openings till October 21st. So you just get right on that, Jen, and see if you can get one of those authors on the show. That would be fantastic. But that's a great pick of the week. I saw that paper too, and that would be a really fun talk. So Kim, what you got for us?
Oh, the foghorn.
Oh, good. No, I'm not the only one to get the foghorn tonight. And James is not here to play
I never get
it.
the foghorn. Oh, he's not here. Oh. Thank you. I couldn't go without it.
It just made me think there was some show we were watching, and they sat down with a child to watch cartoons, and they were watching Bugs Bunny, and they started watching with the little kid, and they were like, "We can't watch this. This is violent." Troy, the stuff we grew up with, they were like, he shot the duck's lips off.
Well, no, Bill, we grew up with the Three Stooges. That didn't hurt us.
We're just fine.
Or does it explain some things?
No, it certainly does, Kim.
Maybe you're right, Kim. And I don't know how I got to that from what the Foghorn Leghorn was one of my favorite characters. So that's my transition for that. But that's all right. Yeah. So Alex, we'll come back to you. Aubrey next on my screen. Glad you're here since you've been in here a lot tonight for having as many shows as you have.
For still being behind on work.
That's right, still being in the weeds like you are.
I think I finally got everything done, including the first show. So my pick of the week is actually a tweet that Brent Watts from our sister station in Roanoke tweeted out tonight. I was finally able to see the comet last night because it's visible like when I'm at work, and then it was setting before I got home. So last night was the first time I got to see it, and we had an amazing thunderstorm in West Virginia last night, and this photographer, from my vantage point, I could not capture both in the same photo, but this wonderful photographer was able to capture incredible lightning and the comet. So it's kind of like one of those moments for a meteorologist and weather nerds and sky enthusiasts. So it's pretty cool.
I know most of y'all probably get Tony's newsletter that he sends out every week too. And noticeably absent this week was his outstanding section on how to find the comet. Did y'all see that it was gone, or did I just?
He's tired of it.
Does Tony customize that thing using software or something? Because it knows when the space station's going over, and so is it? I mean, it looks like it's.
I don't know what he uses, but he must spend a lot of time on that because he customizes it to each one of our locations. I mean, he doesn't just loop me into a DC area. He will put, what's specific for Harrisonburg. So it's incredible stuff. Yeah,
it really is. It's a
secret program.
Newsletter. Troy, it's been great having you on tonight. What you got for us?
Well, as usual, in charge of the Dr. Marshall Shepard fan club in Forbes magazine, I found it really interesting. And Kim, I know you've seen some of Marshall's writing on this, but back on the 9th of July is one of his Forbes articles. He has, "Are you guilty of motivated reasoning?" Now, he also refers to this as wish casting, and that's a topic for another show. Or he says, "Are you guilty of motivated reasoning with weather forecast or coronavirus messaging? Find out now." This is a really interesting article from Dr. Marshall Shepard. I recommend it as my glorious pick of the week.
And Troy, you're always way too sensitive about picking a pick of the week that someone else may have chosen. And I was just kidding you when I gave you a hard time about that.
I'm the number one stealer of these things from people.
Well, somebody's got to do it. But Brian used to steal Wi-Fi and occasionally pilfer a pick. You gave one of the best picks you threw out there today. You and Tony back and forth on.
Yeah.
I had to pick up that app and bookmark that website that.
And I'll save that. I'll save that one for a few weeks.
Yeah, you need to hang on to that one. And I thought all these great picks coming across, and I'm going to take the Foghorn tonight, like Kim. But there you go. Thank you, Troy. But we do have some great guests coming up. Still waiting to hear from Jim Closen for next week. I'm not sure if that's going to happen, but Jan Knoll's going to be here to talk about kids in back seats in this hot weather. I'm really excited about Eric J. Dolan being on the 3rd of August because we're going to be talking about his new book, A Furious Sky. It'll be coming out that same week, the 500-year history of America's hurricanes. And they're just tremendous guests all the way through the months of August, September, and into October, as a matter of fact. We're going to be talking about sprites. We're going to be talking about, we're going to be talking to your friend, our friend, Lon Curtis. That's going to be really fun. We just got so many great things coming up.
If anyone saw Paul Smith, I call him the Sprite guy on Twitter, he actually did capture the comet and the red Sprite. Phenomenal photo.
Cool.
Wow. You get lots of points for that. So, well, is there any other business we need to bring before this august body tonight?
How about our guest pick of the week?
Oh, I have died to skip the guest. What am I doing? Thank you, Troy. Alex, what you got for us?
So
How could I leave out the most important people on the show?
I know it's a little early, but I wanted to start putting it on people's radar. The NWA annual meeting is entirely online. So they're working on the finalized version on how it's going to look, but definitely mark your calendar. I think it's the first or second week in September. But I will just say for any young person watching this, I am entering my senior year at Mississippi State, and I have learned more at those conferences than I have in my 3 years at school. I've learned more at just one of those conferences than the entire 3 years combined. That's not to knock Mississippi State. I'm just saying, you learn the meteorology in school, but then you learn the application and the evolution of it at a conference like this. So keep an eye out for it because it's coming, and the availability of it this year is going to be so widespread and highly recommended.
It's you're absolutely right. It's the best week in weather, Alex, and it will be the 12th through the 17th of September. Starting that Saturday with it really won't be starting that Saturday with the Weather Ready Fest. There'll be whatever other events are going to be that Saturday, but the Weather Ready Fest will be virtual this year also, the National Weather Association Foundation, and we'll be announcing here in about 10 days all the details on it. But I'm calling all content providers that over this, 4 to 5 months now of the pandemic have been putting out outstanding content to folks that are educating at home to reach out to us. We'll be reaching out to all NWA members here in the next 10 days for live events all through the month of September. The entire month will be dedicated to that virtual Weather Ready Fest. So we're going to be looking for live presentations, recording those, putting on the web, and hopefully building the beginning of a bank of great educational presentations that that people will be able to refer back to. Of course, James has been doing great ones all year. He's going to be leading off of that. I think Jen's going to do a special one for folks with special needs. And so please reach out, tell all your friends and colleagues in the business. If you think of one that's really good, let me know, because we'll arrange and get all that information in there. But the foundation, I want to congratulate President Alan Gerard, and Gail Hartfield for, and Henry for, putting, because I was really bummed out about it, because really we were set up to have probably the best one we were ever going to have in Tulsa live. And it was just impossible to plan it. By the end of March, it was evident that it was not going to happen. And, I threw in the towel, and they all said, well, we're not throwing in the towel, Bill. We need to do this. And I immediately was like, yeah, absolutely. That's what we're going to do. So that's what's going to happen. So if you know of someone, or if you want to be a presenter, let me know, because I think you're going to leave a lasting mark with that. Finally, Eli, gave you plenty of time. I know you probably had one already in the bag, though.
Well, just a shameless plug first, weather.gov.
That's what they're for.
Weather.gov/hazard simplification. You can still take our survey. So everyone watching can still do that through August, most of August. And I do have something a friend sent us today, nature.org. There is a bird called a veery, V-E-E-R-I-E, I think, that predicts hurricanes better than meteorologists, not just individual hurricanes, but the entire hurricane season, because they lay their eggs all at once if they have to migrate more quickly than usual if there's going to be a bad hurricane season. And they've actually been accurate according to this article.
So what did they say about this year?
I didn't get that far down.
They've already cut and run, Bill. They've already cut and run.
That's not a good sign. Well, anything else we need to talk about around the old digital mahogany table here tonight?
I just have one thing I wanted to add, just from a science perspective.
Please do.
The reason I'm on here tonight was because of the tweet that was sent out with my survey results. If you are a scientist and you are able to get your results, your main headline down to one image in one tweet, that will do wonders. And I know as scientists, we like to, cover all the bases and go through everything. But if you can condense it down to that, I think you will have a far greater impact with your results than you would if you were to, you publish a 40-page paper, with a link on Twitter, because the image is what gets results and what people see.
I thought when I saw your Washington Post article that
I did too. Yep.
What you wrote about you, Alex, and that was the striking part of it. It was a great article, but that one graphic really screamed, and you did a great job with that.
Thanks.
Well, we're real just proud to be associated with you, Alex. Thank you for being here. You're the future, and we appreciate that. And Eli, we're so thrilled for what you've done and all the amazing work you're doing. I know it wasn't easy at times, and it probably there were some times you were ready to throw in the towel, but you've persevered, got us to this point. So some great things are going to come out of it.
Yeah, appreciate you having me on. Always great to see you guys.
Well, you're always welcome anytime. Come back anytime. You got news to share with us. But
thank you.
Weather Brains is the weekly netcast that's all about weather. As James said, we've been doing this for a very, very long time. Pretty soon it'll be 15 years. That's hard to believe. A show that just started out as a lark has become a mainstay for all of us, and something we look forward to every week, and hope that all of our audience does too. But we generally record on Monday nights at 8:00. And you can get us wherever you consume podcasts. Tell all your friends about it, and I hope you'll join us each and every week for a long list of guests here. But till next Monday night, for the entire panel, guest booking officer Bill Murray saying, keep an eye to the sky, because you'll always have something fun to look at. Great show, guys. Thank you.
Thank you, Eli. Thank you, Alex.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you, guys.
Hey, Alex, please send me your presentation. Kim, great to see you.
Great to see you too.
His email's on that email, that first email I sent you.
I was going to say I had it written down because I was one of the 2,000 to watch the webinars that you're doing with the first one.
Exactly.
No, great work, Alex. Very, very impressive. Really.
Well, thanks. Wonderful. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Not
I'll take care.
surprised. Not surprised.
Okay.
All right. See y'all later.
Bye,
All
y'all.
right. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Well. It has not been the disaster back there that we thought it might, but still, I got to fill some extra time. Great to have Eli Jacks on the show tonight. And Alex, we had a good time talking about some very important stuff for us in the weather enterprise. And again, my favorite thing to do is to listen to these shows later in the week when I'm driving, because actually during the show, I'm working here. So, you're distracted and you can't hear everything. So I'll be listening to this one carefully. So thank you guys for watching the YouTube version. It's always creepy how some people are still watching this after we've been off the air for 15 minutes. But anyway, the audio version will be up on the podcast apps here in an hour or so. So thank you guys for watching. Have a great week. We'll see you next Monday night. God bless and have a great week. Bye-bye.